Long Jaw Prototype, D-01. Written by me. Brother, if you receive this email, I need you to spread the word everywhere you can. You are the only person I can trust to tell people my story so that they will stay away from this God-forsaken facility. My footage will never be recovered. It's not worth it, so I will do my best to describe the events that transpired here. Surely, we all remember the day those photos surfaced. July 12th, 2026, the internet was taken by storm as photos arrived from a group taking a helicopter tour off the coast of New England. What they captured could only be described as an impossibly large water spider, moving rapidly across the waves. While the photos were quickly dismissed by the public, remarking that they were cool, but obviously faked, they became my new obsession. Following the photos and an influx of believers booking tours to try and see for themselves, the small towns along the coast began to shut down. Helicopter tours ceased entirely due to limited fuel availability, and charter boats began canceling trips, listing them as unavailable. Even the beaches were closed, with excuses involving beach renewal programs. As you can guess, this did little more than double my interest in what lay waiting along the coast. Having saved the photos to a flash drive, I began to examine them, as they were quickly removed from all public sites, and people began to lose interest. I studied the photos endlessly, and eventually switched my attention to the waters surrounding the creature, until finally, I saw something. Taken from multiple angles oriented towards the shore, the photos showed not only the pier near which the tour oriented, but also something interesting. A small chunk of debris floating in the middle of the ocean. Upon closer inspection, it could vaguely be seen extending down towards the dark nothingness of the Atlantic. For the past few years, I had taken up the hobby of deep-sea diving, using a GoPro to explore shipwrecks and caves for my small following on YouTube. This could mean only one thing. If something was down there, I was going to find it. Approaching the area in the small fishing boat of a local fisherman who had been paid far too much to bring me out, we began searching for any sign of the debris I had seen. After almost 4 hours of searching, we spotted it. A pipe of some sort, attached to a floating buoy that hummed gently as the waves lapped against it. Gazing down into the water, I followed the pipe with my eyes as far as I could, watching it fall into the depths below. Assembling my dual tank system, I explained my plan to the fisherman. I was to follow the pipe down as far as I safely was able, explore for a while, and then begin my ascent. In case of an emergency, I would pound on the pipe with the wrench I kept on my belt, in hopes that vibration or sound would make their way to the surface. Feeling the rush of staring into the endless blue hues around me, I began my descent. No matter how many times I rehearsed diving, it would always fill me with a small amount of fear as I sank and watched the light from the surface begin to fade away in the smothering darkness. But this time was different. It felt as though something was wrong, but I couldn't be sure what, and it was only made worse as I began to see a faint glow below me of a series of lights. Not wanting to miss out on what could be the footage that made my career, I pressed on, until I had followed the pipe to what appeared to be a large facility, illuminated with faint lights along the outside, and portholes covered from the inside with spindly white drapes. From the outside, I discovered that I could see through some of the windows. The facility seemed abandoned, in disarray, with lights on in some rooms and off in others, and as I explored along an outer wall, I discovered an open airlock. I swam inside and cycled the airlock, which I was stunned to see pumped out the water, replacing it with stale but breathable air. Stepping inside a small room filled with diving equipment, complete silence overtook the air, aside from the deep groaning as the metal structure endlessly battled the dark sea. Air tanks and incomplete sets of diving gear littered the floor and walls, some tanks punctured and suits torn. Overcome by curiosity alone, I shed my heavy gear and began walking down the dimly lit corridors, taking note of the uncomfortably white walls and posters that aimed to bring comfort to the lonely place. Moving further into the facility, thick cobwebs covered some open doorways leading to small, dorm-like rooms, all empty. The lack of people was unsettling, and my stomach churned as I saw the large cobwebs and thought of the photos. But a spider that size couldn't really exist, right? Approaching the webs, I gently placed my finger on it, feeling its strength and sticky texture as a ripple traveled along the web. I followed the tremor with my gaze down a corridor, bouncing from wall to wall as it disappeared around a corner at the end. But I couldn't stop here. I had to see for myself that which my brain refused to fully believe. The light humming noise emanated from small vents that were steadily pumping air from out on the surface above, and as I shined a flashlight inside, I briefly saw movement evading my light's glow. Next, I made my way to the mess hall, which sat in chaos with not a soul in sight, but trays of old molding food littering the area. Benches lay on their sides, and scratch marks covered the walls and floors. Along the ceiling lay intricate patterns of the thick webbing that seemed to grow larger as I traveled deeper into the facility. On the floor lay hundreds of dead spiders and legs that I hesitantly walked over, fearing they could get up at any moment. I found a sign at the end of the hallway that read Security, Entertainment Area, Research Wing, and Moon Pool, with arrows displaying their locations. I chose to go left, finding far fewer cobwebs that way, and wanting to find out if anyone remained in security. First arriving in the entertainment area, I found pool tables, TVs, tables set with board games, couches, game consoles, just about everything you could need to be down here long term. Oddly, the facility seemed equipped with cable lines and internet, as I passed a row of computers displaying a sign-in page on an old version of Windows. One other thing that struck me as odd was that so far there was nothing stating a name of any company in the facility. No site name on the outer walls, no company ads on any posters, and on the few researcher coats I found littering the dorm area, there were no company insignia or employee names stitched into the fabric. Obviously, this was a secretive facility, but to have no indication of origin struck me as alarming. Traveling further to the security room, I was met with a sight that filled me with a deep, primal fear. The door to the security room had been ripped open, and small spiders of an unrecognizable species sat dormant in the corners and along the roof of the hall. Having no personal fear of spiders, however, I pressed on. Upon entering the room, the spiders scurried at high speeds into the air vents and behind cabinets, just out of sight before I could get a good look at them. Inspecting the consoles that controlled the security cameras, I saw deep puncture marks in the panels, destroying most of the equipment aside from one console, which looped a recording of what I can only presume was the last moments of those that had inhabited the mess hall. Watching the recording, I sat frozen in horror as it showed a blur of legs as small spiders coated the surface of the lens, leaving only small gaps to see through as more ran along the walls and floor. Thankfully, the cameras didn't record audio, as I saw the researchers begin running towards the airlock, while others began stomping and swatting at the long-legged terrors. There was nothing they could do, however, and as I battled to keep the contents of my stomach down, a subtle movement caught my eye. Two long black legs slowly stretched out of the open hallway on the recording that led down the path I had not yet explored, the one leading to the moon pool and research wing. I watched in horror as almost in slow motion a colossal spider moved into view, casually moving one long leg at a time as it creeped its way into the mess hall. It was real. The spider in those photos was real. and now I could only assume it was in here with me. The looping video ended with the spider carrying a victim back out of the room in a cocoon, squirming and writhing against all odds, before the video looped back to them casually enjoying their final meal. All those people. Turning away from the console, my eyes snapped to the vent near the floor in the room, and the two long legs protruding from the dark chamber. I quickly ran into the office in the security room and slammed the heavy metal door, desperately searching the drawers for anything to defend myself, and found nothing more than a keycard. Exiting the office, I slowly crept around the outskirts of the security room, refusing to take my eyes off of the vent with the legs sticking out of it. However, the spider didn't move a muscle. I was going to go straight to that airlock and get the hell out of here. Walking through the facility now, knowing what happened here, my curiosity had been replaced by pure uneasiness, and I couldn't help but look over my shoulder every few feet in fear that I was being silently stalked. Once I arrived at the mess hall, the empty room had a very different appearance to me. Not only because I had seen the events that transpired there, but also due to the fact that the far wall was now covered in hundreds of tangled legs and heads. I was cut off. I don't know if it was intentional or how they could be intelligent enough to know my escape plan, but the airlock was now off limits. I turned my gaze towards the hallway next to me, covered in thick webs that formed a tunnel. I shuddered at the thought of that colossal spider waiting for me around the corner, but I had no choice but to press on. I slowly crouch-walked through the tunnel, trying hard to ignore the skittering spiders in the web around me, and being very careful not to disturb the web. As I walked, I thought about what I might find in the research wing. Maybe a flamethrower to clear myself a path out of here. Maybe a bomb to blow this unholy facility out of this plane of existence. Surely there had to be something I could use. I approached the door to the research wing and swiped my card, listening to the sound of the door struggling to slide open with all the webbing holding it from the hall. Entering the room, I saw nothing of use. In fact, I saw next to nothing at all with all the webs stretching across the room. The spiders, however, seemed to resent this room as the place they were trapped in, and none of them were visible in here with me. I picked up some loose research papers on the floor and quickly skimmed over the details of what they had done. This mystery company had been crossbreeding spiders to create a biological weapon they could release on the shores of an unknown enemy. They had crossbred a long-jawed orb weaver, known for its long legs and ability to run across the surface of water bodies, with a diving bell spider, which spent most of its life underwater in a makeshift air pocket. The spiders were genetically modified to grow at an accelerated rate, but the science of how they got so big I did not understand. I shuddered at the thought of seeing hundreds of these monsters racing towards the shore, and a sense of dread washed over me as I thought about how many more of these facilities existed and who they belonged to. Even if I survived this, I couldn't tell anyone. They would kill me for sure. Still, I had to try my best to escape this watery prison. Looking around the room, I saw nothing but glass containment tanks lining the walls, and equipment unlike anything I had ever seen. No flamethrowers in sight. My only option left was the moon pool. Leaving the research area, I took a deep breath and made peace with the fact that the only area I had not yet explored held my only chance of escape, but also likely had become home to the monster that stalked these halls. Nothing would prepare me for the sight that awaited me in that room. The first thing that caught my eye was the black water that beckoned from the center of the room as if it would surge up and swallow me at any second. Next, my eyes traveled up. This room was much taller than the others, and as I scanned up, my eyes met all of the white bundles strung from the ceiling. My memory flashed back to the researchers being dragged this way in a web sack, and the fate of those people caused me to finally lose the contents of my stomach on the floor. What I felt when I stood back up was the most intense feeling of being watched I had ever experienced. Illuminated by the lights in the room, 2 legs slowly rose up out of the moon pool, resting on the floor in front of me. Following the legs, I could barely see a large head, and its many soulless eyes looking seemingly nowhere in particular, but seeing everything. In its jaws it carried a big fin squid, and as I sat frozen in fear, it too was completely still, as if contemplating its next move. I bolted. I ran as hard and as fast as I ever had. The sound will haunt me for the rest of my life. I heard the water splash as it shot out of the pool and skittered towards the entrance after me. Its legs thumped with a rhythm that made my pounding heart seem to be sitting still. Running through the tunnel leading to the mess hall, I slapped and swatted the small spiders away from me and looked behind me. The spider slammed into the wall, landing on its back and swinging its legs wildly to right itself. Taking this as my only opportunity, I made for a dead sprint to the security office. Waves of spiders fell off the walls and streamed out of vents, joining in the chase while I passed the mess hall. The squid-hunting monster thundered after me, killing hundreds of what I could only assume were its children as it charged after me in desperation. As I reached security, I took note that the legs protruding from the vent were gone, but I didn't have time to worry about that, and I quickly slammed the door to the small office I had seen earlier, pushing a chair against the door in hopes of slowing the creature down. Scanning the room, I saw a vent near the floor with the grate popped off. As I toppled over a filing cabinet to block it, I felt the facility shake and was knocked to the floor as the spider slammed into the door that sealed me in my tomb. It slammed its jaws against the door and ripped and clawed at the reinforced glass with its hook-like feet. After a few minutes of trying, it retreated, seemingly trying to conserve its energy, and as I peered through the glass, I saw it stretched out across the ceiling, with its long legs pointed forwards towards the door. With no food, no water, and no way out, I began to do the only thing left I could do. I signed on to the old computer as a guest and began typing my story. I finished with a note. Don't come look for me. There is nothing you can do. Be very careful who you tell about this. It's not safe. Someone needs to know what happened here. I love you, brother. As I typed my final message and hit send, a thought just occurred to me. There was only one area in the room I hadn't checked when I ran in. Just outside that door, the colossal spider lay waiting on the ceiling, and in here, with an open vent on the floor, I realized I hadn't seen my security friend that lay waiting in the vent. I don't dare to look up. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you have a story of your own, please send it to me at awfultoastreads@gmail.com. Until next time, goodbye.